Welcome to today's AM Academy webinar, part of our ongoing series designed to make cutting-edge material science and engineering knowledge more accessible. My name is Zara and I'll be your host for this special session. During today's session, we'll explore the capabilities of the AM K10, we'll discuss key applications and demonstrate how the platform can support early-stage development through to pilot-scale production. So whether you're working in pharmaceuticals, specialty chemicals, nanomaterials, or advanced materials manufacturing, we hope you'll gain valuable insights into how the AM K10 can help streamline your development workflow and reduce the risks associated with scale-up. We'll also leave time at the end for a Q&A, so feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A box throughout the session. And with that, I'll hand over to Kelvin to begin.
Hello, everyone. Once again, I'm Kelvin from Singapore. I'm the Business Development Director for Accelerator Materials. Good to see all of you here this afternoon. So we're here today for the K10 launch event. And what I'm sharing is bridging the gap between breakthrough materials and the market reality here. So without further ado, let's go. Right. So I think for critical bottlenecks in nanomaterials, we are seeing a few things on the horizon today. Manufacturing super cycle, from drivers like AI, electrification, digitalization are driving things at breakneck speeds in the world of nanomaterials right now. And we have the same problem that we have been experiencing for so many years. The lab to factory gap, the critical issue of having 10 years or more to scale up just from lab to pilot to manufacturing. And the limit has always been in the way that we synthesize our nanomaterials, as well as stability of those that has been synthesized. And lastly, we also have disruption in this world, from geopolitical issues, as well as conflicts and tariffs. Those all add uncertainty to our world. Okay, so I think at Accelerator Materials, we have a series of reactors from K1 to K10 to K100, from a kilo to 100 kilograms a day. One of the core benefits of working with us is that we deliver 90% lower costs, as well as improved yields to our customers and partners. We get it right in terms of optimization the first time, and we scale up seamlessly. As well, our technology caters to a wide, broad spectrum of super value materials in the market today. Accelerator Materials offered today is a full stack solution, a combination of hardware and software, leading to your ease as well as a super fast material development cycle. We work with our partners through a series of different business models. It can be joint ventures, it can be licensing, it can be also to develop specific material recipes. So last year, we actually went to market with the K1 Start, and we were already at a kilogram synthesis today. And since then, gone on to release our K1 Pro. This was much earlier this year. And with the K1 Pro, it allowed our clients and our partners to automate their reagent selection and dosing processes. Today, we are very excited to share with you our K10 Start. It goes from a kilo straight up to 10 kilos. It keeps all the benefits from your K1 Start, and it allows you to continue to work with our AI software for your material needs. So with application scope, we talk about what can we do. So on the screen here today, you can see that we have a wide range of material compatibility that we have with metal oxides as well as nitrides. We have metals, inorganic and organic materials as well. We also have moss on the table, as well as quantum dots. So my colleagues will share more about them later on. But really, when we talk about scale up, when we talk about material discovery, and as a technology platform, what are we looking at in terms of impact? 50% more efficiency in terms of DOEs. That means lesser DOEs for you. Increase in your use, increase in your efficiency by almost up to 100 times. 90% lower reduction in your cost, and de-risking your investment footprint. I think these are the real impact that we are delivering right now in the market as a company. So just to give you a very good example, one of the core production model is we are helping a company develop next generation nanofillers. So we actually work with the client's product development team. They share with us the challenges and their specification and qualification through our reactors and through our technology in the AI and machine learning software called AM Learn. we then help the client achieve their material specs. So the tier one chemical client gave us this job. And within a month, we actually delivered a successful proof of concept to them to provide local production. And come 2027, we are actually going to optimize and scale up production with them. Now, you notice that the cycle here is a constantly evolving cycle whereby their end users, applications, or their customers will also provide that real-time feedback in the value chain back to us, and we will then work on a continuous process of engagement with our clients. That's how we continuously support our clients as well. Now, if we were to stretch this business model a bit bigger, we actually enter the co-development and technology supply model. Now, in this technology supply model, you'll see that not only does the client benefit, their third-party supplier, their immediate tech vendors, their OEMs, they could all be part of a whole supply chain upgrading kind of initiative, right? And that's where Accelerated Materials, our impact to the industry is amplified. Okay, right. So just to give you some testimonies as well as feedback from our clients. So Mitsui Chemicals, we actually help them improve their speed as well as the rate that they do and complete their DOEs and R&D efforts. Okay. COA. So COA, we actually engage them as well as some of their tech and supply chain partners to optimize some of the nanomaterials that they have been struggling with. And you can see that we provide them rapid scaling solutions as well. So today, the question that we want to ask ourselves is, from a transformation point of view, where are we at? Where's everybody at here today? Are we still becoming a very reactionary kind of company, whereby any form of disruption from AI tech drivers, from electrification, is then not scrambling to do more immediately, right? As a blind runner? Or are we simply just trying to find our feet and think of what's next to do? And before we decide what to do next, the next wave of disruption hits us. So are you reactionary? Or are we going to cross that technology boundary and embark on innovation adoption? Are we going to do more to become a trend-setting champ? I think that's where Accelerated Materials today aims to lead everyone towards. And that is to be at the forefront, in front of the disruption curve, rather than to be a reactionary follower in the industry. Right. Right. So I hope a very short introduction has given you some insight and food for thought. Thank you very much. Back to you, Zara.
Thank you, Kelvin, for walking us through the gap between breakthrough and market reality. I'd now like to hand over to Dr. Jose for a brief review on annular flow microreactor technology.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining this soft launch event, and to those who are watching on YouTube or on our website, I'm very happy that you've joined us for this session of AM Academy. Okay, so and thank you, Kelvin, for giving that very excellent overview of AM and the value that we do provide to our customers and other players in the ecosystem. My name is Nicholas Jose. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Accelerated Materials. And what I'm here to do is to provide you with a bit of a technical background on our reactor technology and why it's very well suited for some technologies, some materials, and what's the physics? How does it work? Why is it better? So without further ado, right, so nanoparticles, why are they difficult? And we see there are a few critical challenges when you think about nanoparticle scale-up from a technical sense. So currently, most people experience issues with, number one, product uniformity. Product uniformity is very important for improving, let's say, performance in applications from better batteries to better cancer medications to better semiconductor devices. Secondly, to control size and shape. So size and shape are critical when you think about the performance of a given nanomaterial. It's not just about composition, but it's also about the morphology and the structure of that material. And thirdly, in addition to the precision of that product and that control of size and shape, you also need to consider production efficiency. And this is sort of the elephant in the room when you think about nanomaterials, because although you can discover a very interesting and unique and high performance material at the lab, how do you get all the way to production? And so AM has been working over the past 10 years, right, to develop these solutions. And number one, basically, how to improve product uniformity is to improve mixing, mass transfer within your process. How to improve control over size and shape is to improve shear control, which I'll address in just a bit. And also, how to improve production efficiency essentially is by switching from batch to flow in your production process. So what are the current techniques when you look at nanomaterial synthesis? You can broadly group these techniques into two categories. The first is bottom-up, and the second is top-down. Bottom-up really refers to molecule-to-bulk assembly. So this is basically the process of assembling smaller molecules into particles and larger materials. The second way is through top-down, which is essentially through breaking down large materials into small materials. Bottom-up definitely has very high precision and flexibility, but it's very expensive to scale. So this is our starting point, and this is what we focus on as a company. There are many top-down equipment suppliers, which perhaps if you're okay with the precision and impurities they introduce, that's great. But we really focus on the high precision, high performance, and flexibility of bottom-up technologies. So the traditional way to look at bottom-up is through batch scaling. You might experience this at the gram scale through devices like vials, flasks, beakers, which are all having some sort of magnetic agitation, which translate to the kilogram into stirred vessels and large flasks. These are also powered by, let's say, overhead or magnetic agitation as well. Finally, when you look at how to do these at the ton scale, typically you'll have big vessels. These can be 1,000, 10,000 liters at scale. These are typically stainless steel vessels or sometimes glass-lined stainless steel vessels that are predominantly agitated through overhead agitators. And so you can see across each scale, the equipment actually changes, right? And that introduces a change in mass transfer within the reaction process. But what is the reaction process? How do materials actually form? Now, the mechanisms in material formation, you could have an entire series of lectures about this, but we'll broadly look at three different mechanisms, which are nucleation, which is the assembly of molecules into a cluster, surface growth, which is the growth of molecules onto a cluster and forming a larger particle, and also aggregation. So that's the combination of particles into a larger one. And essentially, mixing is important because these processes all happen at essentially different speeds and at different times in the process. But if you have poor mixing, right, then this can actually result in the formation of all three mechanisms at once. If you have slow mixing, right, nucleation, growth, and aggregation compete with each other. And as a result, you get very broad distribution of particle shapes and sizes. And therefore, what people conventionally do with batch technology is they slow down their reaction so that your mixing can catch up to your reaction. So basically, that means lowering your concentration and using slow reactant precursors, which are typically organic. Now, if you have fast mixing, right, this is really critical because you can actually segregate the processes of nucleation, aggregation, and growth. And that's a mechanism called the Lemaire growth model. And essentially, if you have fast mixing, you can form a narrow distribution of particles. And actually, your reaction can be sped up. You can start to intensify your process by using high concentrations and fast reacting precursors. But unfortunately, when you use batch technology, this process is not conserved, right? In the gram, you typically have a mixing time of seconds. In the kilo, it can be seconds to minutes. And at the tons, this can be minutes to hours. So if you're changing your mixing time across scales, how can you expect to conserve the features of your particles? Shear force is another very important thing that you need to consider as well when you are doing scaled nanoparticles. And for those who don't know, shear force is basically a force that's applied parallel to a surface of an object. And it's defined mathematically as that velocity gradient perpendicular to the direction of flow within a, let's say, a fluid motion. And so you can see through this little animation here, when you have particles in flow, that shear rate is proportional to that velocity gradient from the top to the bottom. And over the past few years, or decades actually, many studies within physics have been done to show that actually shear force plays an important role on how particles interact with each other. It changes how they cluster together, changes how anisotropic particles align, it changes how they break up. So if they're breaking up through crack or eroding, or even how they form. So recent studies have shown that actually shear can accelerate even the process of nucleation. And so these are really interesting phenomena in which stand to say, like, why don't we consider shear when we're scaling up this well? So we've also shown in past studies that shear, even at the nanoscale, can influence particle formation. So you see on the left a video of particles in a static environment, essentially aggregating at a slow speed, whereas particles in a flow environment can actually aggregate much more quickly. So actually shear can enhance the speed of particle formation and aggregation as well. So what are the shear effects on particle formation? In summary, if you have low and precise shear, what this means is that if you have variance in your reactor conditions, you can get highly polydispersed size distribution and poor control over the structure. That means you have to use slower formation kinetics as well. And if you're using a continuous flow technology, you can actually develop clogs because you can't break up large aggregates. Now, if you have a high and precise shear condition, actually you can get more precise control over your particles, which means better size distribution, better control over crystal structure and shape. And actually you can start to accelerate your reaction in some conditions at lower temperature, so low pressure, ambient operations. And furthermore, it reduces the tendency of your reactor to form clogs in a continuous flow system. But again, when you look at a typical batch system, unfortunately, many people do not record what the shear rate is in their system. And it actually varies quite widely across the entire reactor. So if you look at a typical vessel, your shear rate is going to be highest at the point of the impeller, as well as at the sides of the reactor. It's going to depend on where you are in your system. And therefore, these are not very well suited for shear-controlled particle synthesis. Now, next, let's look at continuous flow. So continuous flow, you can see this little figure on the right, is when chemicals are conveyed while they're reacting. So we have on the top here an example of a batch. So let's say you're to mix two ingredients, the red and the blue, in a batch. These will gradually combine to form your reaction mixture and your product over time. Whereas with a continuous flow reactors, actually, you'll be pumping your reactants continuously through a vessel, and such that at the end of that vessel or that tube or whatever device you have, you'll have the product, right? And so this means that you can scale not just by increasing size of your device, but by increasing time. And so that's a real key value add for flexible manufacturing, right? Because all of a sudden you can do a low quantity manufacturing cycle or a high quantity manufacturing cycle without changing the quality of your synthesis. So what are advantages, right? So if you're doing batch, of course, it is easy to manipulate and translate for different chemistries. You have the same equipment, you can add anything you want. However, this has very long residence times, so long reaction times, fixed scales, and you need a large facility typically to handle these large batch vessels. With continuous, obviously there's a bit more engineering required. You have to tailor, for example, your flow rates and your reactor length. But at the end of the day, what you can do is actually reduce the volume required for your facility and also have some scalable capacity. So ultimately, batch is great for maybe small scale R&D, whereas continuous is much more well suited for factory production. So if we compare versus annular flow, which is the technology you present in a bit, batch reactor production typically takes a matter of hours, whereas annular flow takes a matter of minutes, right? And so this is where the value is actually extracted in the technical sense, right? Time reduction, cost reduction, and operating condition safety. So annular flow is a very unique flow regime that we've developed at Accelerated Materials for nanomaterial synthesis. It essentially involves a coaxial system in which you have a tube and a tube and a tube inside and a telescoping series in which you inject air through or compressed gas through the first tube and then liquid reagents through the next tubes. This compressed air or this compressed gas forces your liquids into a high shear microfilm that essentially forms a high shear environment in which particles form, and which you can see in this animation here. This is a continuous reactor, and as a result, is a bit like an espresso machine, right, for making particles. So as you can see from the schematic, this is a typical two-chemical reaction happening within our reactor with 3 tubes, tube 1, tube 2, tube 3, and your annulus zones. A2 is where your reaction happens. And actually, within that annular zone, this is just a simple plot of your velocity gradient. You get a relatively constant shear rate within your liquid zone, meaning that, right, the formation conditions are going to also be very precise because of the impact of shear on mixing performance. And at the entrance of this reactor, we actually can see turbulence at a microscale. So actually, when you have an air and the liquid at this very high shear rate, you will form these essentially vortices that increase the speed of mixing, such that the mixing can be in the range of milliseconds or lower. Now, what we see when we vary shear rate, so essentially the flow of our reagents and air, is that if you can vary your shear rate, you can actually just begin to adjust your crystallite size, so basically the quality of your nanoparticles, as well as your aspect ratio or your shape. So this is something that we've shown previously in quite a few case studies, such as the one that will be presented later. What's more, you also get efficiency improvements in, let's say, your process efficiency, as well as the reduction of energy in your process. So in one paper we actually published on nano zinc oxide synthesis, we showed that actually by switching to annular flow for nanoparticle zinc oxide synthesis, we outperformed all of the conventional techniques for synthesis, including hydrothermal, all the way to batch synthesis, not just by increasing the efficiency by, let's say, orders of magnitude, but also by reducing the temperature, in some cases from 400 degrees Celsius all the way to ambient temperature. So that results in a huge cost saving when you move to production. But how do we scale from K1 to K10? So Kelvin very nicely mentioned that we released the K1 Start, K1 Pro, and now the K10 Start. How do you shift? That's always the question. And so this is just a bit of a schematic to show the K1 Pro, which consists of dosing pumps, and the K10, which also has dosing pumps and a reactor, and which we'll see demoed in a bit. And so you can see they're actually quite similar systems. The K1 Pro comes with dosing pumps, high precision dosing pumps, which feed into your reactor here, which go into your collection vessel. The K10 also has a similar setup. High precision continuous dosing pumps connected to a reactor into your collection vessel. So what's the difference between the two? Really, it's about process scale. The K1 is really for the kilo to gram scale production, whereas K10 will do kilogram to ton at a rate of up to 25 kilograms per day. And so if you're looking to produce large scale samples, so kilogram scale samples, or even to do some mid-scale production, the K10 is actually a nice starting point for you. What are the process differences? So here's just a bit of insight into the technical details. For your liquid flow rates within the K1, for each reagent, typically we recommend 0.1 to 10 mils per minute. Whereas within the K10, actually it's a order of magnitude higher, from 50 mils per minute all the way to 500 mils per minute per reagent. Gas flow rates also multiply, but largely the pressure and the shear rates and the mixing times are all similar. And this was what gives us that scalability. When we look at the hardware, the only difference between the K1 to K10 is really in the reaction tube diameter. We still use low pulsation pumps, which allow you that control over annular flow. So, and as well as the same gas flow controllers. So really, the K10 is just a slightly wider tube than the K1. How do you transition, right? So K1, obviously, you do your optimization, you select your liquid flow rates, your gas flow rates. In some cases, we provide custom reactant diameters and lengths. And with the K10, you also have to have the same configuration. So how do you switch here? Well, thankfully, we have a software that we also package alongside the K10 called AM Learn. And this provides you with the capability to transition from the K1 to the K10. It does this with our proprietary model, which conserves your shear rate, your micromixing time, and your residence time, enabling you to make sure that your physical parameters are all scaling between the 1 kilo to 10 kilo per day scale. Now, in just a bit, Dr. Joel will, of course, showcase a case study on nanoparticle zinc oxide, but I'd just briefly like to cover why it's an important case study. So zinc oxide, of course, is a very interesting material. It's very low cost, and it has a lot of different applications, right? Whether that's in batteries or cosmetics. However, the difficulty with zinc oxide is that it can form many different morphologies, many different structures, and it's very sensitive to the reaction conditions. And so this is why it's a perfect case study for us to work on, because even if you change, let's say, the pH just by 1, you can get a different morphology and a different structure. So that's why it's a really nice thing for us to work on and for us to showcase for you guys here today. Now, we've shown with a few case studies, right, that through a techno-economic analysis, that just by going from batch systems to our case series systems, you can actually massively reduce the cost, not only the CapEx, but also the OpEx, right, in scaling up from the 1 kilo to 10 kilo scale. But what's really the massive benefit is shortening the time, right? You can be sure that once you've done your experiment on the K1, that it can be immediately transitioned to the K10 with a low risk. So you don't have to spend months or years just to get to that point of scale. But some other important consider beyond the equipment, right? When you want to achieve high quality nanoparticles, once again, it's not just about the reactor, but you have to also consider things like feedstock quality, what happens after your process as well, how you, for example, put that into your end product, and also the safety. So these are all actually areas that we also help out with in selecting the K10 system. Of course, we have the K10 start, but we do offer as well the flexibility to tailor it to your individual process. Right, I think I've talked a bit too much. So with that being said, we're going to switch to Dr. Joel, who will give us a very nice demo. And yeah, thank you. Zara, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Jose, for that overview and the differences between the K1 and the K10 and how to scale up using AM Learn. It's now time to hand over to Dr. Joel for a short case study and a live demo of the AM K10.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much to Nicholas and Zara for that lovely introduction. So as Zara mentioned, today we're very excited to share a live demonstration of the K10 system today. And the material that we're going to be manufacturing is an antimicrobial variant of nano zinc oxide. Now, as Nick mentioned, zinc oxide is a great material for use with our system because a change in shear conditions and a change in pH can yield many different functions and capabilities within the material. Particularly for antimicrobial applications, zinc oxide is very attractive because it's low toxicity and highly stable. A lot of the morphologies of zinc also absorb in the UV range very highly, and this UV absorption coupled with the antimicrobial properties gives it very good protective capabilities in paints, coatings, and polymer formulations. And as Nick showed, there are a range of morphologies that can be made in zinc oxide, but for antimicrobial purposes, a flake-like zinc is what tends to give better antimicrobial performance compared to spherical zinc oxide, or the star morphology that I'm showing on this slide here. So we previously have scaled up this antimicrobial zinc oxide from the K1 to the K10 to the K100 across all scales. And throughout these scales, we had a series of objectives. Firstly, we wanted a purity of 99%. The particle size had to be under 100 nanometers. The morphology had to be this flake-like morphology, and the antimicrobial efficacy had to be above 99.9%. The synthesis that we're attempting here is we're reacting a zinc salt with a base, and we're getting our nano zinc oxide. We simply have two ingredients here, and we're able to control exactly which zinc we want simply by changing the shear conditions within the reactor. Here we have the results from our scale-up process. Since this presentation is focused on the K1, I'll focus primarily on just a few results, and then we can jump straight into the demonstration. So as we can see from the SEM images of A, B, and C, we can see that we have the same flake-like ball morphology in the K1, the K10, and the K100 scales. Underneath that, we have our XRD results, which show that at the K1, the K10, and the K100 scales, we're able to maintain a consistent crystal phase at 99% of this zinc oxide that we're after. Although I don't have the sizing and the antimicrobial activity results here, our crystallite size was a consistent 20 nanometers across all of our samples, and our antimicrobial activity, as the result of this control in morphology and size, was up to standard at all scales. And as a result of that, I'm able to replicate those results and show you a live demonstration on the K10 today. Let's get started. To get started, we simply click on Connect and wait for the software to find each piece of hardware. If you take a look at the video, on the left you can see our dosing system. In the top section, we regulate and control the airflow into the top of the reactor that you can see here. And along the bottom of the reactor, we control our liquid flow rates, which then go into the side of the reactor that you can see here. Conducting a synthesis is very easy. You just fill in the boxes and hit start. So today, we're conducting an antimicrobial zinc oxide synthesis. I'm Mohammed, so I can pop my name in. The first reagent that we're using is zinc chloride. And the second reagent that we're using is sodium hydroxide. Now, the key question is, what flow rates do we need in order to run on the K10? Fortunately, the system offers us the capability to calculate the flow rates that we need on the K10 based on the conditions that we used on the K1. So if you click on Settings and click on Scale Up Calculator, we can see the K1 Scale Up Calculator window appear here. For this particular synthesis, we used 1 liter per minute of gas, and the total liquid flow rate was 14 mils a minute. And we can see that the system is telling us that our liquid flow rate should be 199 milliliters per minute, and our gas flow rate should be 15.8 liters per minute. And as Nick explained, the way in which we calculated these parameters was by calculating the micromixing time, the residence time, and the shear rate on the K1, and then doing an optimization calculation in order to determine which flow rates will give us those same mixing times and shear rates on the K10. This is how we came up with those conditions. So now that we know that these are the conditions that we need in order to replicate the material, we can type these into the software and begin a synthesis. So our zinc chloride flow rate will be 199, our sodium hydroxide flow rate will be 199, and our air flow rate will be 15.8 as displayed in the software. Now we can set a reaction time. For today, I'll just do it as 5 minutes. And I'll just do one final check to check that the liquid lines are all okay. They are okay. So we can hit start and begin the reaction. So the system usually takes about 30 to 60 seconds to stabilize. we can see that we have live readings of the pressures, the flow rates, and the temperatures in each line every second coming through. And we can see that in just 10 to 20 seconds, the flow rates are beginning to stabilize, and we can see the flow coming out of the system here. So as Nick mentioned, inside this white reactor here, we have our tube in tube setup. So in the central line, we have our air, and it's providing the agitation that we need. It's forcing our zinc and our hydroxide into the edges of the tube, and within a few seconds, we can very quickly see that our zinc oxide is forming. So this is nano zinc oxide coating the outside of the reactor. And it's as simple as that. Unlike traditional syntheses, where you might have to wait several hours, run at very high temperatures, run at very high pressures in order to create nanomaterials, here, with just me sitting on my computer, we're able to do a pilot scale synthesis in just a couple of minutes. Now, the benefit of doing it this way versus doing it in batch is that we control the batch size. Typically, on a plant or a manufacturing scale, your vessel size will determine how big your batch size needs to be. And often, just to make a particular reaction viable, you might have to make hundreds of kilos or tons of it in order to complete that synthesis. Here, our batch size is just determined by the length of time that we decide to keep the reactor running. So here, we'll be running for a couple of minutes, and we can see that the reaction is coming along very nicely. The reactor is beginning to fill up. We already have a few hundred ml here, and if we continued running for 10 minutes at 200 mils a minute, we would fill up this 4-liter vessel very quickly. After you finish running, the system will create a log which has a detailed record of all of the pressures, flow rates, temperatures, and reaction conditions that we used in this system, and it's easy for you to then catalog and store this information away as a record of all of the runs that you've done. Right, to show you the rest of the synthesis, what we're going to do is start the pumps again and speed the video up so that you can see a time lapse of a longer synthesis using the K10 system. So there we have it. We can see that in just 10 minutes, we've created 4 liters of nanoparticle dispersion here. And following this reaction, all you need to do is just to take out the reagent lines, put them into a suitable cleaning solvent. This could be acid or water, and run the pump for a few minutes, and it will be ready to go to do the next reaction. And it's as easy as that. But that's it. Thank you very much for joining this demonstration. This is our K10 system. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I'll pass back to Zara to conclude the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, team, for the great session. We have a few questions. So how long does it typically take to set up a new process on the K10?
Yeah, so typically it involves a campaign at the K1 scale where you would use our machine learning capabilities to refine the material that you want. Typically, this can be done depending on the number of variables that you have, in somewhere between 20 to 50 experiments is what we've seen. Because of the throughput in the K1 system, you're able to generate experiments very, very quickly. So you can do this in just a week or a couple of weeks. And then generally, we say that the transition from K1 to K10 can happen in as little as a week. You've seen how easy it is to generate the flow conditions that you need for the K10. In order to make some small tweaking, the AM Learn software is available to help you make any modifications that you might need at the K10 scale. But compared to months and years that it might typically take, our proposal is to bring this time down to weeks.
Thank you. Oh, we have another question. Can you also use solids as educts in the system?
Sorry?
Can you also use solids as educts in the system?
Unfortunately not. So primarily the K1 system is intended for liquid-liquid transformations that Oh, yeah, I can start my video. Yep. Yep. So typically, the system is intended for liquid-liquid use, where we're reacting two liquids to make a solid. But if you are interested in reacting solids together, then the system can be customized, and we can provide custom solutions that will, for instance, allow you to pump slurries and do more complex reactions.
Amazing, thank you. What level of operator training is required to run the system?
So we provide full training for the system, and we believe that it's one of the strengths of the system that whereas previously you might need a team of engineers and a whole warehouse staff to run this, particularly at the K10 system. I think anybody who is quite adept at just general bench chemistry, making up solutions, weighing up solids, weighing liquids, there's no special expertise that's needed to run the system, and we provide full training and full support throughout your ownership process.
Great, thank you. And how easy is it to clean and switch between different chemistries?
So with our K1 system, this current system, it's super easy. You just remove your reagent lines from the chemicals that you're reacting with, put them into water, put them into acid or any solvent that's going to clean out your system well. Just hit rinse, hit prime on the software, and the system will clean itself out. And if this even is a little too laborious, with our K1 Pro system, we have an automated valve system where the system is able to clean itself and prepare itself for the next reaction. And for a future iteration of the K10 that we're working on, it will also rinse and clean itself and prepare itself for the next reaction, so that you can run material after material without having to intervene yourself.
And what is the typical timeline for moving from K1 development to K10 pilot production?
I guess this is similar to the question that we had earlier. And as I mentioned, it's typically of the scale of weeks. If you're quite lucky and the system works well, you can possibly even do it instantaneously the next day. But I guess, yeah, just through preparing solutions, scaling up your solution preparation, that kind of thing, weeks usually.
Great. And how does the platform reduce the risk of clogging, which is often a concern in nanoparticle synthesis?
Okay, so I think this is the beauty of this high velocity jet of air that we use for mixing. So because we have this high velocity jet of air, it essentially acts as a system to remove the clogs that we have in the system. And because it's constantly flowing through the system, it's constantly there to clear any small particles of material before they're able to develop into larger clogs. And this is how we're able to keep the system free of clogs.
What support does Accelerated Materials provide after installation and commissioning?
So there are multiple ways in which you can work with this. So if you'd like to do the system yourself, then we can just sell you the system, and we would provide the regular hardware and software support that you would expect with that. But if you would like more assistance in developing a material, then we can basically take you every step of the way. We can help you to develop the material, develop the recipe, give you some guidance on kind of downstream processing of your material. Yeah, we're flexible in the ways in which you can work with us.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks to everyone in the audience for joining us. If you would like to know more about the K1 or the K10 or want to discuss potential partnerships, then please do get in touch. A quick reminder that this webinar is part of our ongoing AM Academy series, where we share knowledge and tools to help accelerate materials innovation. You can explore more webinars, articles, and technical resources at acceleratedmaterials.co/AM Academy. Thanks again for spending your time with us. We really appreciate it. Have a great day, and we hope to see you at the next AM Academy session.